Alright, so today we're going through the second part of this transmission rebuild with the Jake's Performance Freshen Up Kit and Recal Kit. I already did a lot of the teardown and rebuild stuff on previous videos, so if you guys want to see that stuff, there I have a whole playlist with transmission rebuild stuff. So I'm going to focus more on the Recal Kit with this one. So right now I'm going through the direct drum. I already have the clutches, steels, and the piston out. First step was remove this center lip seal here. Just this guy here. It normally goes in here like this. So take that thing out. And then I also drilled a 60 thousandths hole right there, bleed hole. And that's going to be for the dual feed. So I'll go ahead and put the piston back in. And we'll get the springs back in. And we'll put the clutches in. Alright, so I did do a new rear case seal, because that came with the Freshen Up Kit. And you don't need to do anything with the rear carrier assembly for the Recal Kit, but the rear carrier does have to come out so you can put the new reverse band in with the Freshen Up Kit. I got the new reverse band in, put the rear carrier back in, have the sun shaft in, the thrust washer, and I also put in the snap ring that goes underneath the center support. Next is the center support. I did take the center support piston out and I replaced the lip seal inside there. I removed the second sealing ring right here that's for the dual feed. And now I'll be ready to put the center support back in. And then once I set the center support in, I set it up with the case holes facing down, of course. And then I usually look inside the case holes and then I'll give the output shaft a little bit of a turn so it seats down into the sprag. Once you turn this thing a little bit, you'll see it fall down. There you go. Now you can see all the holes are lined up. And your center support seated. And next I'll go ahead and I'll put the beveled snap ring on top of the center support. After the center support and the beveled snap ring are in, you can put the wave plate, the intermediate wave plate in on top of the center support. Then we can put the intermediate clutches in. So I have all the clutches here. I just had them soaking in a bucket. Then we have the last clutch to the top, and then we have a solid section on the pressure plate that goes over in the 9 o'clock position if you're looking at it from the bottom of the case side. Put that guy in just like that. And then we put the intermediate snap ring in. This is a thicker intermediate snap ring. Got this on eBay. It's like 12 bucks. This is the stock snap ring. This is the aftermarket snap ring. So this one will actually break. I've broken these with a HD2 kit before, and then you lose second gear. Next we have our new forward band. And you have this little hole here that goes on this pin. Hole goes on the pin, slides in just like that. Now your direct drum goes inside there. Direct drum, this is the one that we drilled the hole in. You can see the hole right there. Alright, so we got the drum all the way in. Here, metal on metal on the bottom. Make sure we put our thrust washer on top of the direct drum. That goes in between the direct and the forward. Flip the forward drum over the top. I'll drop this in the same way. There we go. Hear that metal on metal clunking. Next I'll make sure we get our bearing on top of here. We can put our fourth drum in. Alright, so next I'm going to be taking this pump apart because we got to drill the pump. And actually maybe before I do that I'm going to take the pressure spring out. We'll do that. Just got this little snap ring here. Alright, so this should come out once you get that snap ring out. We're basically going to take this whole assembly and keep it just as it is. We're going to replace the big spring. So we have this spring here. So we'll take the spring out of the kit and then we'll just put this back in there the same way that we took it out. So big spring goes in and you have a washer that goes on top of the spring. The small spring goes in the middle of the big spring. We'll push all this back together. Alright, so now we got the pressure spring in there. do is hold this thing because it does fall. There we go. So while we're in here, we'll look at the pump gears, make sure everything's okay, not scored up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drill this section of the pump, and that's for your line to lube drilling. Alright, and there you can see we got the drill bit all the way through. That's the port that needs to get drilled. We got it all cleaned up, so I'll put this back together. Alright, so now that we got the pump all back together, we got the hole drilled. I got a new seal on it. I put the new O-ring around it. So we'll get this thing back on, and we can start working on the valve body. Alright, next we're going to be putting the reverse servo in. So this is like the 1-2 accumulator. So you need to remove these O-rings. There's a black O-ring here, black O-ring here. You remove those, then put it back in. Leave the O-ring on here. So this will work for your reverse, but then you won't have the 1 and 2 accumulator. So we'll put that in there. So we'll put the servo in, put the gasket on, put the cover on. I usually like to make sure the gasket is over the top of the backside because this thing's in at an angle, so this is going to stick up a little bit as you push it down. Just want to make sure that it's over the top of the piston, so when you push it down, you want to make sure that that gasket isn't binding in between the servo and the case. Alright, so next you're going to have 4 check balls. You're only going to use 4 check balls. All the Jake stuff that I've seen, he only uses 4 check balls in his stuff instead of the 8. So they go here and here. These two that are close together. And then this one and this one here. So then he does supply this little diagram that goes with it. Blue are the ones you put in, red are the ones you're leaving out. You don't have to plug the case with the dual feed. So Jake is very specific and not deviating from the instructions. He does it with the plate. So the plate actually blocks the port for the dual feed, so don't have to worry about plugging the case. Next I'll just put the 4th drum bolt and center support bolts in. And if you're confused which goes where, the rear is a steel bolt because it's going into the steel center support. Front is aluminum because it's going into an aluminum drum. So now we can get into the Jake's plate and the accumulator delete. Take the accumulator cover off so we can get the plate off of there. And these accumulators and the bolts are not going to be reused. The plate and the gaskets are not going to be reused. While we're in here, we'll get our little filter out. Alright, so next we can put our valve body gasket on. Get that all lined up. And then I'm also going to have to drill the plate. It says it comes set up for medium shifts. So he has the holes marked. Your 4th gear, 3rd gear, 2nd gear. So I'm going to drill these out to 1/8 inch. And then we can throw this back on. So then he does give recommendations for sizes to drill for 2nd. 110 thou to 125, 125 to 140, or 93 to 125. So I'm going in like the 120, 125 range because that's the same for all of them. So I'm just going to do that, just have one size. And then usually when I'll drill, I already drilled this one. I'll drill and then I will go with a bigger bit on both sides of it just to kind of clean the burrs off of it. So you get a nice flush surface. So that's all good. I'll put the separator plate on. Make sure the holes are all lined up with the gasket. And then I'll put the top gasket on. So the case gasket. And then the next part of the kit is the delete plate with the little bolts. It does come with the bolts for the plate. You're probably wondering, like, why does it need a plate if there is no holes in the separator plate? I'm pretty sure they do that because there's still fluid flowing into there, and this section right here doesn't have any support from the case. So this section goes into the hole in the case where there isn't anything bolted right up against it. So this will give it a little extra support. And if that is completely wrong and you guys know the science behind it, feel free to leave a comment. So now this case gasket, I'll just take some assembly lube and stick this on here so it doesn't slide around, and it'll stay put when I flip it upside down. I always do that. I always put it right in that open spot, and there's just a hole there. At least I'm consistent. So now we should be good to flip this thing over and put it back on the trans. So we'll flip this thing over, and then I'm going to line up the selector inside the manual valve right away. Pressure switch back on, the one that has the 8mm bolt heads. Alright, now that that's on, we can go ahead and plug everything back in. So you got your shift solenoids. Run this guy back through underneath here. Plug in your pressure switch. Hook up your line. Torque converter solenoid, pressure control switch, and should be good, ready to put the pan back on. Okay, so this thing's all done. He does have a pan for it, so don't worry about the dent. He does have a pan that has a drain plug and it's not all smashed in, so I just beat it out with a deadbolt so it doesn't crush the filter for now. And it was missing some bolts back here, so I put 2 extra bolts in. We got the rear seal on. It had broken speed sensors, so I found some speed sensors with the bracket that I saved. Had them in a box, so the front one I'm going to put back on when I get it off the stand. But other than that, this thing's ready to go.